Now, listen, mate, you got another great story. We go to historyouthere.com, historyouthere.com. You got some great stories there, local stories. This is a good one. Ipswich's Jewellery Heist or robbery. Tell us about it.
Well, it wasn't a clothes hoist. It was more about the great Ipswich Jewellery Heist of 1931. Now, it happened.
Yeah. No need to pick me up on a pronunciation of a word that's got me around the
Danny,
Katrinos.
You're a little man. You need to be picked up every now and again.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Anyway, it all happened back on the 14th of March in 1931 with the Great Depression at its peak. Now, Clifford Jackson broke into the Hastings Jewellery store in the Colthart building at 181 Brisbane Street here in Ipswich. That's just 100 metres down the road from you, Danny, in the best West Brisbane West Bremer radio studios. You'd know it, the Colthart building. It was a daring robbery because it was in broad daylight.
Where's the building?
181 Brisbane Street. 181 Brisbane Street.
Oh, right. Just
across
down the road.
Just down the road.
Yeah. Up the road, yeah.
Yeah, up the road, well, the other side. Yeah. Anyway, it was a daring robbery because it was in broad daylight, right after closing time on a Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson went straight to the safe at the front of the shop and dragged it into the back room where he tipped it on its front. He then went to work with a giant tin opener and cut the back of the safe open and took everything he could see. And he got away with over £1,000 worth of jewellery and £100 in cash. Now, this was a huge amount back then, enough to buy 11 workers' cottages here at the time.
What year?
And today, it's the equivalent of around $400,000 based on average weekly earnings. It remains the biggest heist. That's heist, Danny.
Heist.
In Ipswich history.
Now what year was that? What year was it?
Yeah, there's 1931. So 90 years ago this year. Now, there had been a series of 5 tin opener safe crackings that shocked Brisbane in the months leading up to the Ipswich robbery. But the Ipswich break-in, that made headlines around Australia, and the perpetrator became known as the tin opener burglar. Now, just like in other stories that I told you about, Danny, Ipswich proved the undoing of Jackson, who was arrested within days of the theft. Now, unfortunately for him, he made a number of misjudgments that led to his downfall. Firstly, he'd only recently been released from jail in Sydney, where he'd been convicted for a number of robberies that were identical to his Queensland jobs.
Right.
All of them were opening safes with his giant tin opener. Now, the Brisbane detective, Nobby Clark, was in Sydney at the time and quickly identified Jackson as a prime suspect. When Jackson was picked up in Brisbane, he had a gold pen on him, and inside of which was hidden 115 diamonds. Not something you normally carry around during the Depression.
No, well, anyhow, yep.
Yep. Anyway, also, Jackson had trusted his brother, Harry Collins. You see, immediately after the robbery, Jackson sent 20 of the watches down to Sydney and asked Harry to look after them. Harry threw the lot in the Sydney harbour, and when questioned by police, he sang like a bird. You see, Harry was an upstanding citizen. He served in both the British and Australian navies, both the Brisbane and Sydney fire brigades, and was waiting to join the New South Wales police force.
Right.
So Harry told the police everything.
Dobber.
But the biggest mistake that Jackson made was that he actually caught a taxi to and from the robbery.
Right.
He left his brother waiting in the car while he went in and did the job.
Right.
The driver was lifelong Ipswich taxi driver Bill Jones, who lived at Newtown Street up at Booval.
Bill.
And, of course, Bill described everything to the police. Now, Jackson and his brother were both charged with the offence, but Jackson gave an impassioned plea for his brother, saying that, he'd plead guilty if they let Harry go. He also said that Harry had nothing to do with the robbery and had been tricked into being there, and that their mother would die of a broken heart if Harry went to jail. And so Jackson got 2.5 years hard labour, while Harry was given a suspended sentence of 12 months. But I don't know for sure what happened to their mother. And Arthur Hastings, the owner of the jewellery shop in Brisbane Street, he became many times the Ipswich Bowls champion. So, Danny, this story, it's to do with, I guess, the theme of lockup and all that. But, look, you just don't muck around at Ipswich when you've got our taxi drivers and our bowls champions.
Mate, where do you get this? It's so well put together, the story, and you find out things that truly amaze me. How do you research this stuff?
Well, I get tips from our listeners too. In fact, you're talking about listeners around the world and everywhere.
Yeah.
We've got an avid listener, and I know he's listening on the Gold Coast right now through the app. It's Tom Gerhardt. He's a legend of the Brisbane Bullets back when they were at their peak. So, hello, Tom. But Danny, I get tips from our listeners wanting to know, tell us about this, tell us about what, and or even about their houses. It's a bit wet to go research things now, but Yeah, we got listeners giving me tips as well.
Mate, Peter
Tom
Carey.
Gerhardt.
Peter Carey loves basketball. He used to be the marketing director for some teams and that. So-
Tom played with the Toowoomba Mountaineers when I was the manager up there as well.
Absolutely, he did. Tom
Wow.
Gerhardt, Sydney Mines, Pop Dickerson, all the big names are up there.
Oh, now you're talking. Oh, awesome.
All right, mate. Well, I got people texting me now as well, and I'm trying to answer them and talk to you, and Peter's talking to you, and we're talking basketball. 8:23, Colin Dorber's coming up next. How do we find out the stories that you give on West Bremer?
Yeah, go to historyouthere.com and the Great Ipswich Jewellery Heist, that'll be online tomorrow morning at historyouthere.com.
Good on you. That was Harold the H. Peacock with more historyouthere.com, and how good is he? You'll hear him again here on West Bremer Radio next week.